Yeah, and a guy named Josh Zegan, who's in LA, pop producer, produced and helped. I believe he helped write it with Helena. I'm pretty sure.
Amazing. So. Giving credit is always welcome on this show.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. So let's have a listen for about 90 seconds, and we'll chat a tiny bit about what happened there.
What happened?
Sound cool?
Yeah, let's do it.
Why is everyone who meets with me intimidated when I'm the one who's dropping the dad jokes in conversation? Used to think there's something wrong with me, but I just can't help it, certifiably. I don't know if this hit me now. I guess that I'm just bad at parties, 'cause people exhaust me. Whoa, I go kamikaze every time I walk through the door. And I know I'm bad at parties. Can someone stop me? Whoa, I say I'm sorry every time I walk through the door. Honestly, a couple of drinks could help a girl out, 'cause otherwise I'm popping and saying hello, then I'm out. I'm reaching my limit, talking about things we don't care about. I need a minute, I promise it's not you I worry about. I think it's obvious by now, you know that I'm just bad at parties, 'cause people exhaust.
Yeah, Sam, sounds dope.
Thank you.
That's a really interesting groove, you know? It grooves in like an yeah, it's got like a kind of almost like an inverse kind of, I don't know. I didn't fully work out the pattern, but it still grooves even though it's like a backwards groove,
Right.
You know?
Yeah, when the chorus kicks in with kind of almost like a 4 on the floor back feel, it's a really interesting vibe.
Totally. And the vocal is so bright.
Thank you.
Right? It's right.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, but not harsh. It sounds great. And yeah, I don't know. It sounds awesome, dude. Tell me a little bit about what went into the mix and the master.
Well, I mean, shout out to Josh Zegan for recording things well. He records Helena himself, I know, most of the time, and I think that's how this was. And then he produces really great tracks, so he usually gives me everything I need, you know, from the start. So his roughs are always really nice. They sound like the record, essentially. So I started from a place that was already, it's how it should be in my opinion, because it means the producer did their job. They like actually gave me what I need, which is sometimes not the case from producers. They just like throw the kitchen sink at you and expect you to find the song out of it. So he gave, you know, sonically it's like 80% there already, you know, like it's in a great place. And for this one with Helena, we always focus on making her vocals super upfront, you know, and bright without being harsh. And so it's usually that, and then trying to add cool effects that are almost honestly like atmospheric feeling. There's kind of some delay reverb throws I did.
That was that massive distorted 808 kick thing at the beginning.
Yeah, the kick 808 thing, you know, is part of I like low end, so I'm always manipulating bottom end and 808s. I know on this song, like, I used a ton of, well, on her vocals, I know I used CLA vocals, like the classic thing.
Oh, wow. Waves.
Waves. And that's like super, it gives it an immediate like upfront brightness that no other plugin does. So I know I use that, and the slap, like the default slap echo on it, just pulled back, just creates like a perfect verse to me, kind of verb echo. And then the 808s are, I usually will parallel them, not in like compression, but in tonality, which isn't necessarily new, but like I use R bass a lot still. So I'll have like a sub 808. And then
R bass is a miracle plugin.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Sometimes I use it on masters too.
Really?
Yeah, it can thicken up a song that has no bottom end. Secret sauce right there. Mess around with R bass on your master. or on your mix bus. And then I used a decapitator on like the mid range of the 808, and then just layer those into each other so that, you can hear the tangibility of the attack of the 808 on small speakers, which is really kind of like people have really shifted into saying something is really bass heavy, basically, if they can hear the tangibility of the attack of the kick. I remember for a long time, people used to be like, oh, the kick is huge. I can hear it on the iPhone. It's like, no, you can just hear the beater head. Like, you actually don't know if the kick is big. All you can hear is that thwack, 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 each time it hits.
You're hearing 3K, mister.
Exactly, yeah. So the kick is big, yes. But yeah, the song was fairly straightforward. I know on this mix bus, I actually used OTT, which if people are familiar with is like a iconic dubstep plugin that used to be used all the time. It's basically a multi-band expander and compression. And I find on pop stuff, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's almost like a little secret sauce. I used it recently on I used the Slate one, the new one, the MoTT.
Yeah.
On like a heavy rock song.
Uh-huh.
And it just kind of brought the bass and the guitars like out a bit more from the speaker, so they had a bit more definition separation.
Yeah.
In like a very interesting way. And just like a subtle amount of it,
Yeah. Yeah, you can make a real mess of it quick, but it's a pretty dope plug-in, and I find the expansion side of it, the upwards, to be, you can get things really loud and still have it feel dynamic, like there's movement in it, which this song I think transitions well from verse to that big kind of chorus feel. And then at the end of this song, which you probably didn't get to, the last chorus has this really cool octave chop that says "Bad at Parties," and it kind of like is like a rat-a-tat guitar effect we did.
I love rat-a-tat, by the way.
It just, then you need to listen to the end. Like, it has this dropping line, "Bad at Parties," like "Bad at Party," like it just drops and it feels kind of like the rat-a-tat layered harmony distortion.
I know exactly what you're talking about, by the way.
Yeah. It's like the rat-a-tat iconic sound, Yeah. But it's in the last chorus in like kind of a breakdown, and it makes the song, even though the song is only 2 minutes and 20 seconds, there's just not a boring part of this song, which is something I'm always fighting for, to make things not feel boring.
So what did you do? What did you do to do that rat-a-tat effect?
We just layered like harmonies of the lyric basically, and then put, I always used Logic Distortion 2, or the fuzz pedal in the guitar. I find Logic stuff to be terrific. That's what I mix in and master in. When I say master in Logic, it's more of I'm just using the pitch and capture for the most part, but I find the automation in Logic to be superior still with the way I like to use it. Yeah. Just in my workflow. Superior is the wrong word. I just like the way it's set up in Logic.
Yeah.
For the way I like to use it.
Logic's great.
But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, I don't want to say straightforward pop song, but from the mix, like the mix standpoint was to make it feel like nice and balanced, honestly. And then at mastering, I just kind of exploded it. My typical, when I'm mixing, I know what I'm going to do at the mastering stage almost ahead of time, honestly. And so for this one, it's, usually I limit first, which is something most people don't do, but I'll usually take a dB or two off. And I'm a big stacker is what I call it, which I usually do limiter, EQ, compression, EQ, back in the box to like the fab filter, just controlling the inner sample peaks, because digital does that way better than analog. But yeah, there was like some limiting from the Better Maker mastering limiter, the massive passive I like using for low-end shelving. And then there's probably, I'll have to look at the notes, but it was probably either like the Elisa Express, or it could have been the Tube Tech, LCA2B, and then probably the Pultex, I would imagine, is what I went with. So it's just like back to back to back stacking. And I find that to be a big part of my sound. And it's not even really like a new idea to stack things, because we're stacking things from the start of like microphone to preamp to compressor to plugins to then it gets sent to the mixer who's going to do, more and more. And then
any audio signal is going through like 20 things by the end of it, right?
So sometimes when people hear me talk about stacking, it's like a new idea, but it's like, no, I'm just elaborating the process of what we already do. I'm maybe just a bit more heavy-handed at mastering with what I do with sonically exploding things. So I love low end, and not that my records are always heavy bass, but I've found a really by my stacking technique to be able to get things really loud and still bass heavy without it feeling like floppy. It has impact still. And I think that just comes from proper balance. And then I think people sometimes think I'm doing these gigantic curves or something. But when you have something that's flat and balanced in theory, you know, a couple dB boost on the low end then sounds quite dramatic because there's actually room for it to finally pop out and the contrast of what's going on. So I think that's something within my stacking of like, when I first limit, I'm taking a dB to 2 off. So it's already making things on average more loud more often. So consistently the same volume. So it's already kind of balancing out stuff. And then if I boost low end a little bit, it kind of makes it feel really large. And then if I limit that again, the low end is usually going to be tickling the compressor. So the low end kind of attenuates, but now it's bringing up everything else more loud more often. And then I'll do like some full spectrum kind of EQing of everything, because everything, all the character has just been made more loud more often. So then I'm EQing the kind of the special sauce that I feel like has now popped out from what was even in the production. You know, little things that I heard early on of like, oh, the snare has this cool sustain in it, or oh, her vocal has this, you know, cool frequency. Every song is different. Every song has a special sauce, like in my opinion. And part of our job is to find it, you know, find the song essentially. But I find that I can make my records really feel kind of like energetic and larger than life by balance and then just slight contrasting things. And I find that to be a huge part of my sound and why people hire me, you know, again and again, is I just take their song and make it sound like it's on steroids a lot of the time. Yeah. You know, or some people have called it like a lifter, like I'm a lifter or an energy bringer.
Right. It sounds like you're using the compression to kind of even everything out. Use the, and I guess also EQ to kind of just
correct.
Like, you know, you make everything sound very even, and then it's like, where's the energy?
Right.
You know? And then you kind of...
That's a great way of summarizing it.
A little lift here, a little lift there. And
that's
that
it.
Pushes.
Yeah. It's not very complicated.
I mean, the energy gets more pronounced, I guess, is what it happens. But when you do that, you know what I mean?
You are correct. That's a good way to summarize it. So that's my hot take on that song. It's dope. Helena Mayer's awesome. She's a pop artist in LA. She's getting lots of momentum over the last couple of years. I've been working with her for 4 years now, actually.
This has 46,000 plays already.
Yeah.
We're at
it just came out last
January 18th.
But yeah, she's an up and comer. Like, I mean, it's always hard. Like, I know she's been talking with labels and stuff, and I think she could become a big star. So I'm excited for her this year to see, you know, where she goes. But she's a sweetheart, and I love working with her.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, Sam, this has been amazing. As it was the previous time as well. So great to catch up with you, and I liked our balance of like life stuff and music stuff. I feel like that's what it's all about.
That's it.
Before we close this out, I do want to ask you the final question of the show, which I ask everybody who comes on the show, and I probably asked you this the first time, but maybe things have changed for you, so worth asking again. Yeah, just looking back on your journey, was there maybe one thing that you'd want to impart on your earlier self and just be like, hey, Sam, you know, keep at that. That's going to get you where you need to go. Or maybe it's the other way around. Sam, don't do that. It's holding you back.
Say no more often. I don't know what I said last time, but...
Might have been that.
It might be that still. Like, it's something I'm still learning and digesting. It's probably say no to things you don't want to do. And that's that fine line of like, there's things I do that are not like the most fun. There's mundane in everything you do, and finding the joy in that is part of I think life's journey. But being willing to say no to projects that you're kind of have the wrong motive towards, like that gets into kind of the Atmos thing again of like, you have to find this balance of providing for you and or your family, but also know that you're building a business. So if you have a long-term mindset, you want to make sure you're building the business correctly to represent the actual product you want to put out. And that's where when I started, you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to pay my bills and I just need to work. So I just say yes. Kind of creates confusion of what it can be a bit helpful in that it can bring clarity to what do you really like doing when you're first starting. There is some value in that potentially of being like, oh, I actually do like mastering this type of record and not that record. But there's also, you've got to, I think people know in their gut when they need to say